everyone, and welcome back to Around the Block with GoodBlock. My name's Leah, and I'm co-hosting today with Erika and Nathaniel. Before we jump into this episode, I want you to think back to when you were in school and would be given a group assignment. I'm sure many of you remember that during these assignments, there were those that did most of the work and others who took most of the credit. As Web3 evolves and we explore new ways of collaborating, working in a DAO can often feel similar to these group assignments. That's why today we have an extra special episode for you on Around the Block. This week we're going to talk about the challenges of working in a non-hierarchical group like a DAO and how to mitigate them for a successful group project. DAO. Please welcome this week's guest, Jenn Dixon. Jenn is an experienced teacher in the Seattle area who teaches 5th and 6th grade humanities. This experience makes her a fantastic person to speak to about the challenges regarding coordinating group activities and initiatives, whether that be school projects or, in Web3's case, DAOs. They're basically the same thing. Hi, Jenn.
Hello.
How are you?
Doing pretty good, yeah.
Thank you for being here with us.
Of course. It's surprising to me that something like a DAO, which admittedly I know nothing about, has anything to do with school projects, but I'm interested to explore.
That's one of my first questions for you. How much do you know about Web3 blockchain?
I know it exists. Wow. I know that Nate talks about it a lot, and I try to follow along, but admittedly, a lot of the words just go whoosh.
Right. So you don't know much about Web3?
Nope.
All right. So for you and anyone watching at home that may not be aware, DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organizations, which are essentially just that tech bros co-opted structures like co-ops and rebranded them and integrated Web3 tools. Is there, how else can I explain it? Nathaniel?
Yeah, it's like bottom-up governance. The people are the ones governing as opposed to having a centralized organization like an executive group doing all the rules.
I think we would say too that, a DAO differs in that the idea is that it can be completely autonomous, right? We don't have to trust each individual body in this group. That's the kind of the cryptographic part of it is what secures that for us, right?
Yes, that makes perfect sense. And so knowing what a DAO is, and people are really excited about it. Crypto Twitter, Jenn, is always blowing up talking about DAOs and how they're going to change the future in the world. But some weak spots or some problems have started to rear their ugly head, so to speak. Just to give you an example, some complaints I see is, how do we incentivize people that belong to this DAO or this community to actually do the work? How do we properly reward people for the work they've done? As we know, not everyone does equal amount of work or equal quality work. How do we ensure that the people that are making the decisions are aligned with the people actually doing the work? This goes on. But Erika, Nathaniel, and I were speaking one day and we realized, oh my gosh, DAOs are school group projects all over again. It's the case. And that's why we needed to speak to you. So thank you for being here.
We started immediately.
When you think about it, for most of us, when you look back on school and group projects, the first thought is, ugh. Because I know I always got stuck doing all the work. And I hated that. And I always told myself, when I become a teacher, I'm not going to assign group projects. But the truth is, group projects are actually incredibly useful to allow for an individual's skills to shine, but also in areas where they're weaker to grow if you pair people up properly.
That makes sense. So as a teacher, when you're assigning these group projects, you go in fully aware that some students have things they need to work on and and you're purposely pairing them. You're not just making random groups.
No, that is truly, I know that's what happened a lot when I was in school. You would just like count off and that was your group. And when you do that, you're doing a disservice to the students, because you could end up with some seriously mismatched groups. And you can't do that. You have to, as the person starting it, you have to be aware of personalities, their social structure between the groups, because in schools, obviously, cliques are a huge thing. So you want to make sure you're not pairing one entire clique together. But you have to really just set forth a plan for yourself as the teacher. And you have to know what your students are amazing at or what they struggle with. I have a student this year who suffers from dysgraphia. So he is a much slower writer. So naturally, I'm not going to assign him the role of note taker, because that's going to cause major frustration for him, but also the rest of his group. He is, however, an amazing artist. And so he's in charge of their extra materials. They have to provide drawings and they can create stuff on their computers to print out. And he has already created this amazing world for the project that they're working on about what is a civilization. And he's just blowing us all away.
Wow, that's incredible. I love that you're actually playing to their strengths. And I think that's something that we even try to do, like within our company, we're really pretty non-hierarchical within our company as well. And I think one of the reasons that works is because we're constantly like playing with each other's strengths and weaknesses, right? Like, we know that one of us is not as strong in this aspect, but others can step up and fill in those gaps. So I think that's why we work pretty well together, right? So it's important to realize that it's like a puzzle, kind of putting it together, right? It's not just you can't just dump out 3 puzzle boxes and hope they all fit.
No, you definitely cannot. And it's really important that in these groups, they are a safe space almost, where it's important that everyone feels heard. It's important that everyone knows mistakes are going to happen. And sometimes what you come up with is not going to work at all, and you just have to throw it out and start over. And that's okay too.
Can you give us some tips about creating a safe space? Because there is this tendency, it seems, since it's all online pretty much right now, to just argue the same facts over and over again. How do you know when to fold them? Or how do you make a process that's like, we've all been heard?
And people get really emotionally attached to projects too. It's like, even beyond a school project, we're all doing certain DAO type projects because they're things we're really interested in and passionate about.
When you're working, especially in a group, and you want to make it have that familiarity and that respect, really, which in a 6th grade classroom can be really difficult to come by sometimes. But it's important that whoever is really facilitating the creation of these projects, it's important that they set the tone. You have to model behavior for everyone to follow. And it also really helps me to have very clear instructions. And with my classroom, I generally set time limits on certain activities, because if not, they will spend all day arguing one tiny meaningless little point, and then you've wasted your whole day and you haven't accomplished anything. So you have to set a schedule. It is really truly the only way that not just the group can stay on task individually and as a group, but for me as a teacher, then I know, okay, they have this much time. Here realistically is what they can get done. And we're still giving them the support they need, the standards they need to hit, as well as the ability to play around a little with the guidelines. Because you always have students that think, okay, this project is horrible. I don't really want to do this. How can I change it? And you have to actually be pretty flexible as a teacher, because some lesson that you spent 6 hours planning and you're like, this is going to be amazing, everyone's going to love it, they hate it. So you have to be willing to just go, okay, next direction, let's do this. And especially now, because these kids were used to being in school on Zoom generally. So they were used to having the chat features where they could message each other and talk smack about someone else. They're used to trying to get away with this stuff. And as a teacher, I can't let that happen. You really have to be careful in what you're modeling for them, because I am a rather sarcastic individual, and that will just hop out at any time. But I've had to really learn how not to model that for my students, because I want them to respect each other, but also me. That's not to say we don't joke around and be silly, because we absolutely do. But it is more about teaching them, how do you work with someone that you may be the complete opposite of?
Right. So what I'm hearing from you that I think could be applicable here is that maybe in a lot of these DAO projects, and of course every project's different, it does help to get to assign or vote for or some kind of facilitator whose job isn't to do the work or create the ideas, but almost just to moderate groups in their working to help move things along and set the tone. Okay, that's interesting. That's something I didn't see coming out of this, but that makes complete sense. Because we're all only human, and apparently it's not just a tech bro thing to argue about minutia. Apparently it's just a human thing. Sixth graders do.
Yeah. Oh yes. There was an argument last year, I remember, where in our creative writing class where we run a D&D campaign, they were arguing, do we go left or right? What they didn't know is whether they went left or right. It was a circle. But they spent 20 minutes arguing, well, what if we split up? What if one of us goes this way? What if? And I was like, as their DM, I'm just sitting there going, make a choice. Just pick one. I promise. Just pick one. It's not the end of the world. Yeah. And then when they found out it was a circle, they were just like, oh. I was like, see, when I tell you to move along, sometimes it helps to listen. And that is why, especially in group project things, one of the roles you always must assign is a facilitator. And you always want to have a resource manager and a presenter.
What's a resource manager? Sorry, I'm ignorant.
So a resource manager for a school project would be the person who keeps all of the notes. They're not necessarily taking them, but they're keeping them. If you have to keep track of any source material, if you need to create a poster board, they're the person that has the poster board and remembers to bring it. So while each person is involved with all aspects, it is good to have those roles and have them fully defined for the students. Like, here is exactly what you need to do. It helps keep them on task.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then, well, and a lot of times with school projects, they can be a lot more short term. How would you recommend a couple of ways to help keep people on task when it's a little bit longer of a project? Like, say you've got a class maybe that has a whole semester long project, or like for our case, DAOs are a longer term thing, so how do we deal with those long-term goals?
Well, when dealing with a long-term goal, when I was in my master's program, I started teaching in a particular style called project-based learning, where you are doing these longer projects and they all tie in together. And just because of the way my classes are set up, they can all relate, because I have my students for 3 separate classes. So I just tied it in across all the classes. It's really helpful still to have a schedule, to have those deadlines put in place, and you want to do check-ins. I check in with all of my students. I will do it as a group, but I also do it one-on-one, because that way then they can speak a little more freely with me and not worry about the rest of the group. And I've even in the past, when I've had larger classes, I have implemented like an anonymous feedback system where they could send me a message. I wouldn't know who it was from, or they would write it on a Post-it note, leave it on my desk. And that is a way they can communicate their worries to me without feeling like a snitch, which is a rather big deal. But check-ins, I check in when they're doing a long-term project. Say we're doing one that's a semester long. Every week I check in, and they have to hit certain goals every single week. And if they're not, and I see them starting to lag, I have a conversation with them about, hey, why aren't you getting your work done? Is there something outside this that's going on? Is this not interesting you? And sometimes in the case where this student has maybe lost a little bit of interest in what they're doing, I will ask another student to switch roles with them, because they should ultimately get experience with each of the roles throughout the course of the year. And sometimes it can change mid-project. I've had students that are amazing at starting projects, but finishing them doesn't happen. So maybe on the first project, they're starting it, but on our next one, they're going to have to be the one that's either carrying us through the middle or the end, because that's the only way you can really get proper growth for each person.
Completing projects does seem like a big problem for a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That could be the Web3, like the Achilles heel summed up.
We start projects.
We start.
And it's fine, even like if you are starting the project, but about midway through, everyone's losing steam. Be willing to change it right then and there. Maybe your goal shifts, moves up, moves back. Maybe it changes completely. And that's okay, because especially in the school I'm teaching in now, by allowing yourself to try new things and even fail, really mistakes are how you learn. That is my principal's philosophy. And we as teachers show it too. They'll ask me questions, and I don't know is an okay answer. And then we all figure it out together. And
I love that.
It helps.
Yeah, because I think one of the key components, just my opinion, everyone, is that we are often in the tech space obsessed with like efficiency and, a straight line from A to B. But DAOs are by default a community, a group of people working together. And it would be valuable for people to realize, hey, if I'm going to be a part of this community for the long run, I'm going to have roles I'm comfortable with. I'm going to have roles I'm not as comfortable with, but it's important that I participate as much as possible, because only in that way can we really create this trust that you're talking about, and kind of this, what's the word? Accountability to each other.
Yeah. And grow together,
yeah.
right? I mean, you get that buy-in. You also learn, get better understanding of people's strengths and how to utilize our talents better in the future too. It's really, really amazing.
So another big problem I see is in the Web3 space is peer review. And actually, I'm now seeing people create tech to give peer review to each other, and then arguing about if this is an appropriate way to do it. I tend to think people are probably overcomplicating it, but like you said, there is this weird part of just it's so online.
Yeah.
How do we respectfully review each other in the group if we're a part of this DAO or this community?
Well, for me personally, in my class, I've always used, not just for me giving feedback, but also when I ask the students to give each other feedback, I always start with some kind of a rubric, just here are the main points that we want to make sure are covered. Here are the stretch goals that we want to make, that we really want to get to, but we might not. But also it's important to use what we call the sandwich method. You start out with something really great that the person did. Then in kind language, you say, this part perhaps is a little confusing to me. I think you could strengthen your research or something like that. You're not just like, oh, this is terrible and sucks, but you do treat it respectfully, but then you also follow it up with another good positive thing.
So becoming a pro at constructive criticism.
Yes, because if you tell a student, wow, that sucked, they're done. They're not going to listen to anything you have to say for the rest of the day, the year. They will sabotage every lesson you try to teach. I've seen it happen. It hasn't happened to me because I don't tell my students that, but it can really have lasting impact on a student because, like I said, I've seen that happen, and that student then fully gave up on all classes for the rest of the year because they were just like, I can't do this, I'm the worst, so who cares? And if you don't keep nurturing the buy-in, like, these are our goals, you have to consistently point them out and remember them, then the students may forget what they're doing. I have in my classroom, we have what we call essential questions for a unit. And by the end of this unit, you will be able to answer this question. And we also have what are called learning targets, and they're specific goals we want you to accomplish. And in our case, they fit in with the state standards as opposed to like rules and bylaws and things like that. So I refer to those all the time. I'm like, remember, this is our goal. And at the end of each class, we take a quick 5-minute reflection and we go, okay, do you feel we did this? And everyone just gives a quick informal yes, no. Sometimes we go in depth, sometimes we don't. And then it's like, okay, do you feel confident in this on a 1 to 5 scale? And these are called informal assessments. So it's just those quick little check-ins with the kids to make sure, hey, I feel comfortable with this. I learned this stuff. And yes, I still feel like I'm approaching that goal. If on a day they're not really feeling it or getting it, then that allows me as their teacher to change my plans around a little bit and reconfigure it to address the areas they think they're not getting. So you really have to be willing, based on that feedback you're getting, to pivot if necessary. So when they have to give their peer reviews back, because just for anonymity's sake, my students do all of their feedback on a template I create, and they type it, no names, and I give them all the feedback after everyone is done, so that way a student can feel that they're honest. But it can sometimes hurt to get that constructive criticism. So in this way, it's not a personal attack, because if you don't attack those small problems when they start, they grow into huge issues.
Rifts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in a small group, you have to be aware of that, because then the cliques start taking over and you don't accomplish anything. Even if you all want to accomplish the goal, everyone is so dug into their emotions and dysregulated that it's not going to move forward.
Interesting. So what would you recommend if a group is stuck? They're in that position where we've maybe caused a rift somehow and we're not moving forward constructively. Like how do you unblock that?
For me, I will, as the overall facilitator of class, I will try to speak to the individuals that, are feeling that way. And I try to do it separately because I want to hear how each person is feeling or thinking. Because especially in classrooms, one person is mad at another, their whole group is then mad at that person, but they may not know why. But it's just because, we don't like that person, we don't like that person. And you can't let that happen. So then it really becomes a matter of the facilitator sort of jumping in there and being like, okay, so this has happened. We acknowledge it. And at my school, we do the method of here is what I see has happened. And then the other person says, here is what I heard you say. Here is what happened according to me. The original person, here is what I heard you say. And then they compare it. And that usually helps figure out where the
disconnect ended up.
The disconnect happened. It's usually lack of communication.
Right.
Or the communication isn't clear.
Mm-hmm.
And so we try to sit down and do that. But in an online space, it can be really difficult because we are all protected behind our screens. And, someone
Right.
6,000 miles away could think I'm a terrible person and is talking about me to all their friends. How do you address that? Well, the best way to address it is either direct conversation, or everyone has to kind of agree to a blank slate. We start over, because if we don't, it's going to sabotage our goals. And then we will have spent however many weeks working on all of this only to get stuck in this sand trap. And nobody wants to fall into that. You want to hit your goals because there are rewards and accomplishment and achievement. And that's really what we're all going for.
Yeah. And especially with a DAO, right? It's all there because of a common interest, right? And so it's like, I think with a DAO, it's even easier to keep things tighter in that way, because as long as you are practicing this, reflecting on your goals, right? Because the more we reflect on our goals, especially in a DAO, the more I think it's easier to remember, like why we're all here and what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely. That is the top thing I learned when I was getting my master's degree. It was, as a teacher, after every single lesson you teach, not only should you ask the students for feedback, we call them exit slips, basically just tell me one thing you learned today, tell me one thing you feel like you don't get. And then we take that and try and apply it to our teaching styles and how we are. So I have to use their reflection to reflect on my own stuff. And this year I've started really trying hard to do that after every lesson, even when I don't necessarily want to. And I just want to come home and not think about work. But I have seen, just in this short amount of time I've started doing this, such a different feeling in my classroom. I have come home every day and been like, I taught this amazing lesson and the students were all engaged and this is awesome. Whereas other years I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm the worst at this. And the only way you can honor those goals is to remember them and check in on them and check your progress, because that's why we do it. My goal is I want to see my 6th graders be prepared for 7th grade. But I assume for the DAOs, they have a common interest, a common goal, things they're working towards. You get that by actually working together. And the more you put that off with silly separations or arguments, the longer it's going to take.
Completely.
Wow. Great points. Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, I know I probably speak for everyone on this call, but teachers are undervalued. The knowledge you gave today is just incredible. And just one more question. When can we convince you to leave teaching and just start creating these kind of interactive templates for groups for DAOs and Web3? Because I think this is people that actually have experience at this kind of organization are desperately needed. And there's a needy 6th grader inside of all of us. And we probably do need some teacher energy.
Sixth grade was always that difficult year because you transition to middle school and you might start changing classrooms, but you're also going through intense changes internally. And middle school, for nearly everyone I know, was awful. It was terrible. So as a teacher, it's my job to make it less awful. And honestly, even in teaching, Collaboration. I have resources from friends of mine. There are whole teacher communities all over the internet that supply resources and advice, and use those resources, use your network. That is how you get better.
Well, I see a future, not too distant future, where if we succeed in Web3 like we want to, there's going to be a huge demand for people like you with your skills. So we're a little head of the curve here, I feel.
I mean, blockchain's in its middle school years, it's growing. It's trying to find its identity. Went from proof of work to proof of stake, and we're changing our identities as well, Yeah. I identify with this.
Sometimes you need help with it, and that's okay.
Yes.
Usually there, like you said, there are resources everywhere right now. Even though blockchain is so young, there are still resources out there for DAOs to look at other DAOs and see what they're doing and what's working for them.
And with DAOs, you need your community. Without your community, you're nothing.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for talking about this with us today. This has been so informational. I had no idea how many parallels there would be that we found, even after we had kind of chatted about this before. But, wow, just so many, many great tools that can totally translate,
If you ever need anyone to hand out detention slips, I got your back. It's okay.
We know who to call.
I don't hand out detention. Who am I kidding? I don't. But if you ever need someone to crack that whip and get people in line, call a teacher.
Thank you, Jenn. It's been so much fun.
Thank you for having me.
Speak soon.
Yeah,
absolutely.
See you later.
All right, everyone. Now it is time for our block stuff, or BS of the week. We actually have 2 BSs to discuss. So we're going to go around the block twice. Just so everyone knows, this is the segment where we just like to speak about timely things that are happening in the blockchain world, or just in the world in general. It's kind of a free-for-all. So Nathaniel, I heard that you had something for us that you discovered.
I got a good one for you. This week, Netflix announces that they are banning crypto ads on their new subscription service that is going to be ad revenue supported. So, and this comes because Microsoft is actually going to be the one providing the ad revenue package. And this is just another one of those in a whole string of series of Minecraft and Microsoft and Xbox not supporting cryptocurrencies in the least. So there's 2 pieces of news in there. One is there's an ad-supported Netflix coming at the end of this year, and the other one is no crypto ads for Netflix.
It's so weird. There's so much money in crypto advertising right now, especially. It's very strange to me that these larger companies are turning down that ad revenue. Did they? And I've read a few different articles. I can't find anything that really says why they're not doing it. Other than, the only thing that we can think of is, we've discussed before, maybe they're getting ready to roll out something of their own and don't want to dilute that market.
Microsoft's a huge company, and I don't think that they're ready to go blockchain yet. So,
they definitely have people already doing it, right? Or at least looking into it, talking about it. But I think once they're a big enough company that they can do the Disney thing and move slowly and wait and see what's going to be successful, right? And then launch that when they're ready.
Right.
So we had one more piece of BS that we found that this kind of happened in the this past weekend or over the last few days.
Before we go into that, let's just put a trigger warning on this. This next topic does deal with death and potential self-harm, suicide. So if that's something that is going to upset you, please turn off the show now. Thank you.
Not to be dark, but at the height of the shorting of Bed Bath & Beyond, the CFO has decided that to take his own life, or we're not certain entirely what, but right before 3 or 4 days before all these shorts are supposed to be due. You know, the same thing that happened with GameStop is happening with Bed Bath & Beyond. Over leveraging. The CFO decided to take his life by jumping out of a 19-story building. And that's very sad because he had such a future.
That's a bummer. And it really, for those of us who aren't well-versed, read me, in the stock market and leveraging and all this stuff, Nathaniel, can you kind of explain what's been happening with these stocks of companies that, for all intents and purposes, seem dead or not innovative or not, they're not the kings they once were? What are people doing to these stocks to make them so volatile? I'm not sure I understand.
Well, there's a tug of war going on between both retail and the exchanges themselves. The exchanges, what they do is they can issue shortings of stock. So if you take on a position, but there aren't actual physical stocks for you to take, they borrow some stocks for you, and eventually they'll be filled later on down the line at a higher price or maybe a lower price, but they borrow them to fill them for like retailers or larger investors. And so the larger the pool of borrowing, the shorter the stock is going to get. Exchanges on shorts have strike dates where the date is going to expire. They have to pay back that borrowed stock. And so what retailers are doing is they are identifying these stocks that are over leveraged, and then everybody buys into them. And so when they expire, the exchange has to pay the higher price to fill those lower price contracts. And that's called shorting a stock. If you sell off at those high prices to the exchanges, then you make millions of dollars. And shorting is something that has been going on forever. So it's been going on for a while.
And how does that tie into this Bed Bath & Beyond CFO possibly taking his life? Is it that the price goes so low and he's somehow to blame, even though that was the market? Or
he's not to blame. He's not to blame, but he would be ultimately held in some sort of responsibility since he is the chief financial officer. Whether he gets fired, whether he doesn't get to live the lifestyle that he lived before, whether he didn't actually commit suicide, we don't know. Police haven't said. It's all alleged. We just know he's not alive anymore. And chose not to take the responsibility of what's going to happen at the end of this week. So, it does not affect the stock either way. It might cause the stock to crash a little bit, but it's going to actually cause some price action either way, up or down. It's not going to stay the same.
Very interesting.
Well, it's interesting because, as we know, we're in Web3, we're in blockchain, we're just in crypto by default, and it sounds to me like whenever there's any kind of money involved, shadiness will be abound. So,
yeah, well, they say that it was after insider trading lawsuit claims. So,
that's new.
Yeah. So, who knows?
Well, I feel for his friends and family. I hope that justice is served and they get to the bottom of what happened there. But I also hope as a society we can move forward from profiting off of really what sounds like horrible things in the world in general and in the crypto world and, just overall.
And additionally, I know this might be dark, really dark, but insider trading hasn't traditionally carried a very long jail term sentence. So, he might have gotten a slap on the wrist and 2 years in jail and paid like $10 million to an exchange as a penalty. And then that would have been the only thing that happened to him. So it's kind of like the response didn't justify what could have happened to him.
So are you thinking that there's a chance it's something worse that we won't know about?
I'm a natural conspiracy theorist, but I'm not going to put it out. I won't publicly say yes.
We will, if you're having thoughts of self-harm or just feeling low, we will provide on this video information on maybe potential resources that you can reach out to. It is a sad fact we've seen in our line of work that when prices in crypto go down, some people online really struggle with that because they feel they've lost everything. But it's important to know that you haven't, even, I don't want to diminish that feeling, but the great thing is tomorrow's another day, right? So we'll get you those resources. Let's end on a happier note though, because there is a lot to look forward to. What's something that each of us maybe is looking forward to for this next week? I'm looking forward to GoodBlock's continually pushing towards the open beta release of DStore, our decentralized storage application. Like Douglas says, to drop some alpha. I think that might be happening this upcoming week. Technology gods permit, if they permit that to happen. So I'm looking forward to that.
What are you thankful for this week?
I don't know. Well, I got to go be in the woods all weekend. So
yeah,
it was delightful.
All right. Well, that wraps it up for this week. Thank you for joining us again for another riveting episode of Around the Block, if I do say so myself. Shout out to Jenn, who gave us her time today and is a teacher, and she spent her Labor Day with us. So I appreciate that. Go ahead and like and subscribe. Share this video with friends, hit all the buttons, and show your support for us at GoodBlock, and so that we can continue making this content for you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. See you next time.
Bye.